Everybody has done the passages, guys? Has everyone done the passages? Anuj, we will, don't worry, we will take care of each one of these things. Okay. Uh, okay, so what would you say the level was of these passages? So one for easy, two for medium, and three for difficult. Could you just type one, two, or three? One easy, two medium, three difficult. Can you just tell me? Okay, both of them? Okay. It seems most of you think they were medium. Shubham is saying first passage to be a tight one. I think he means difficult. Okay, second one. First easy, second medium, Abhishek. What about others? First easy, second medium. Okay, I think, if I'm not wrong, the ones who found the first one easy are from science background. Either they are engineers or some other science background. So I'm thinking of Tushar, Abhishek. These would be science people. Yes, Sumit, don't worry. We will take care of this. All right. So here's the thing. Some of you found the first one easy. Still pay attention, because obviously there are things to learn here. The strategies, how I'm thinking. I've made a few notes actually, which I wanted to talk about. I'll have to repeat this in the next class also, because this is very important. So I'll do it briefly right now, because today, because of some mistake, um, it all got messed up, which is why very few people are going to be here. But just to tell you briefly, guys, you know, obviously you will focus on the specific things I'm going to talk about with respect to specific passages. But my advice to you would be to sort of, as much as possible, as much as is in your hands. Good evening, Rohit. As much as is in your hand, to learn larger things, bigger things, meaning uh, the thought patterns. What are my thought patterns, and how do they differ from your thought patterns? And can you learn, add or subtract to this? It's not necessary you'll always add. You may have to subtract sometimes, And so try to figure out bigger learnings, okay? Patterns. So instead of thinking, oh, yeah, so now I know the meaning of this particular word. No, figure out how did I go about understanding the meaning of a word which I didn't know, but I tried figuring it out from context. So try doing these things, okay? Try learning larger things. And so in this passage, and I'm guaranteeing you, and you can disagree with me, and you please don't hesitate in disagreeing, but you can only do it later once I'm done with it. So here's my challenge, okay? Those of you who found the first passage easy, after I have done it, will have significant amount of new insights that, oh, okay, could have been done like that. Okay, if you disagree, you can obviously let me know later on if it didn't happen like that. All right, so I think we should begin. And all right, so as usual, first step is preview. Okay, so let's try to preview this passage and let's see what happens. Cultivation of a single crop on a given tract of land leads eventually to decreased yields. So, if you cultivate a single crop, meaning the same crop, again and again on the same land, it eventually leads to decreased yields, meaning the yield, the productivity, you can say, of the land would reduce or would decrease. Now, again, if you remember, those of you who were there with me in the last lecture, GK, as I said, is a double-edged sword. It will help me big time in reading the passage, and it can harm me while answering the question. So, GK, I think most Indians know, because of farming and all that, yeah, this is true. That is the whole concept behind crop rotation. So the moment you read this first sentence, you'll be like, yeah, of course, I think that's the reason why crop rotation is recommended, and that's why everybody does crop rotation and so on. So okay, chances of this passage is going to be about that. And those of you who know about crop rotation even a little bit would be like, I got lucky. Chances of this passage is going to be my types. Okay, Last sentence of the first para. Similar treatment of sugar beets, cotton, and potatoes has had similar results. Similar treatment. So we don't know what this similar is, but something was done to some other thing or some other plant, and this whatever happened to them happened to sugar beets, cotton, and potatoes. All right. So this is the first para. So first para, what can we predict based on this? What kind of a passage this is? That's something to do with crop rotation and some obviously something to do with plants. We can't figure out much from the last sentence. All right. Second para, first sentence. These improvements. Now the pronoun these means that this something related to improvements has been mentioned in the previous paragraph. Okay. So these improvements in crop yields. All right. So if you remember, first sentence of the first paragraph said that crop rotation ended up in decreased yield. So okay, so which means something has happened, either better form of crop rotation doesn't lead to decreased yields. If you keep planting the same plant, leads to decrease. So probably this passage is going to be about crop rotation or some other technique which helps in increasing the yield. So these improvements in crop yields through the application of, now this is a mouthful. Okay, so here's my suggestion. Whenever you come across a term which is a mouthful, like it is very complicated. So what a lot of people end up doing when they see such a thing, oh man, this passage is going to be difficult, I'm not going to understand it, and so on. No, you symbolize it. And chances are, if you read further, you will figure out which side is it on. So I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to say. So right now I will call it as PF. Okay, through the application. So these improvements in crop yields through the application of PF is helping in the improvement of crop yields. All right. So PF for all is a positive thing, which means you can call it as the good guys. Okay, so pay attention. So through the application of the good guys suggests that agriculture could benefit, and benefit obviously, if improvements and benefits are the same thing, agriculture could benefit from the use of bacteria genetically altered for specific purposes. I think now I can pretty much figure out what this passage is going to be about. The first paragraph starts with that if you keep planting the same crop on the same land, things go bad. And then the last sentence of the first para said similar treatment, some treatment. And then this para starts with these improvements through the application of the good guys benefit from the use of bacteria genetically altered. So we can pretty much guess that this passage is going to be about GM food, genetically modified food. And genetic modification is a highly contentious, meaning very, very debatable topic. People fight over it, and not just individuals, but even countries. So for example, US is one of the only developed country which has given full-fledged rights to GM, whereas Europe, most of the places GM food is looked skeptically, it's banned in some places and so on. India, big time, lot of stuff happened with respect to something called BT cotton, and then with BT brinjal, mayhem was created. BT cotton was still allowed, but BT brinjal, finally they had to deny it. As of now, it is denied. So GM is a highly, highly contentious topic. And so if you even know a little bit about GM, again, you should feel happy. Like I know about GM because I used to read a lot about GM. So I will be very happy that, okay, fine, the passage is going to be on these lines. So, and so genetic modification with respect to this PF, which we have already called good guys. Okay. Last sentence of the first para. These prospects, so some prospects, these is a pronoun, something must have been mentioned before, lead many to hope that current efforts to assess the risks of deliberate release of altered microorganisms, altered meaning changed, microorganisms, which is GM. So risks of GM food. And as I told you, it is highly contentious, and it is contentious because of some genuine risks associated with it. So, they lead many to hope that the risk of deliberate release of altered microbes will successfully answer the concerns of opponents. so many times if you're reading something on GM, opponents will be mentioned. Sometimes it will be written by an opponent, but sometimes the proponents, the opposite of opponents, people in favor of something, proponents will mention GM just to discard them or to, logically refute them and so on. So opponents have to be there. So something will answer the concerns of opponents and create a climate in which such research can go forward without undue impediment. Now, suppose we don't know the meaning. Sorry, we don't know the meaning of this word impediment. Okay, so try to figure out the meaning contextually. These prospects lead many to hope that current efforts to assess the risks of deliberate release of GM food or organisms will successfully answer the concerns of opponents. So something will satisfy the opponents or satisfy their concerns and create a climate in which such research can go forward without undue X. So if you are taking care of the opponents, so what will be opponents otherwise do to you if you don't take care of them? Well, they will create problems, they will create obstacles. And so if you take care of their concerns, then the research can go forward without undue those things, without undue obstacles, and without undue those people, opponents, standing in your way, not letting you go ahead and do the research because of their concerns. So absolutely, impediments basically means obstacles. So that is how we figure out. All right, so we have read 4 sentences, and GM brinjal case is pint in, I think you meant point in India. Anyway, so we have understood that this passage is going to be about GM food, and not GM food as such, but yeah, how to bring it about, which means putting altered, changed microorganisms so that you come up with GM food. And maybe they have figured out, and we can guess this from the first sentence, maybe they have figured out that a GM alternative to crop rotation. Why? Because the first sentence says cultivation of a single crop on a given tract of land leads eventually to decreased yield. So probably they have figured some way out of this. So let's read. One reason for why the yields decrease. One reason for this is that harmful bacterial phytopathogens. Now this is again a mouthful, but remember it is used with the word harmful, which means we can pretty much call them the bad guys. You already know the good guys. These are the bad guys. Okay. So harmful bacterial phytopathogens, organisms parasitic on plant forms. Remember I told you, usually whenever I come across a conceptual kind of a word, its meaning will be defined well. Look at this. There is a comma after phytopathogens and then organisms parasitic on plants, which means what are phytopathogens? Organisms which behave like parasites to plants, to plant hosts, which means they are external to it and they start eating it. So parasites, everybody knows that. And so I told you there will be a comma or a full stop or bracket. Here it is a pair of commas, and a pair of commas, guys, I won't write it here because it will take time. A pair of commas or a pair of dashes or a pair of brackets, okay? These phrases in English are known as parenthetical phrases, and parenthetical phrases talk about something previously mentioned, but they are additional to the information. And a lot of times they separate the subject and the verb. Okay, so for example, phytopathogens, and then increase is the verb here. All right, so in between the parenthetical phrases, just defining phytopathogens. So harmful phytopathogens, organisms parasitic on plant hosts, increase. So phytopathogens increase in the soil surrounding plant roots. This is what happens if you keep planting the same plant. These bad guys increase in the roots. Okay, and obviously if they are bad guys, bad things will happen. The problem can be cured by crop rotation. This was a prediction because we know one of the best solutions that historically farmers have found for this problem is crop rotation. The problem can be cured, but we can also guess that they're going to give us an alternative because this is GM food, right? Okay, so the problem can be cured by crop rotation, denying the pathogens, the bad guys, a suitable host for a period of time. So if you keep changing the plant, then the bad guys don't have something to attach to. Remember, they're parasites, so they need somebody to attach to. But next time when you change it, well, they got used to the previous type of plants. Now they don't know what to do with this one. So hence, crop rotation helps. However, even if crops are not rotated, see our prediction, even if crops are not rotated, the severity of diseases brought on by such bad guys, this is how you have to do. You don't have to say that word each time, okay? So the severity of diseases brought on by such bad guys often decreases after a number of years as the microbial population, microbial, those microorganisms, population of the soil changes and soil becomes suppressive to those diseases. Now, this is a long sentence, so let me break it down and do it. Now, guys, as I said, there are some of you who have understood this passage. They might think that this is boring or whatever. But first of all, as I told you, you will learn something. But more importantly, only in the initial classes will I go so slowly, because once you get a hang of how to go about it, then the classes can go very fast. Okay, because now you know everything that has been taught. But right now I have to keep emphasizing on new things, because at least as far as I am concerned with respect to you, we are doing it for the first time. Okay, so bear with me. If you think that this passage was easy or whatever, it's okay. Just chill and try to still learn. Okay. So this is a long sentence, and I told you we'll learn how to understand long sentences. Okay, this sentence, first of all, is starting with the word while. We have discussed this in the previous class, which means this sentence will be made up of two parts countering each other. While there may be many reasons, sorry. Oh, it was the previous sentence. Sorry. However, so however is countering the previous sentence. So even if the crops are not rotated, so obviously previous sentence was about crop rotation. So however, even if the crops are not rotated, so understand this, the severity of diseases brought on by such bad guys. So even if the crops are not rotated, the severity of diseases brought on by the bad guys often decreases after a number of years. So the severity of the diseases which the bad guys cause, that severity comes down even if you don't rotate the crop. This is surprising. Okay, how? As the microbial population of the soil changes. So the microorganisms in the soil change and the soil becomes suppressive to those. So because of those microorganisms, the soil becomes suppressive, meaning it suppresses, it brings it down, it cuts it, it stops it. Stops what? Those diseases. So this is the reason why even if you don't rotate the crop, after a few years, the soil can become all right on its own because of microorganisms. Okay. Now we start with while. While there may be many reasons for this, so there could be many reasons, it is clear that levels of certain bacteria, and certain bacteria is here synonymous with microorganisms because bacteria are microorganisms. So while there may be many reasons, it is clear that levels of certain bacteria, such as, and we now know this PF are the good guys. Okay, so you can be prepared and you can predict what is going to happen in this sentence. We are going to be told how these good guys help. Okay. Uh, it is clear that levels of certain bacteria, such as the good guys, a bacterium antagonistic to the number of harmful phytopathogens, and phytopathogens is the bad guys, and these good guys, they are bacteria. So the singular of bacteria is bacterium. So it's a bacterium, again a comma, which means this word is being defined now. Previously we were defined phytopathogens, now PF is being defined. So Pseudomonas fluorescens. So PF, what is PF? It is a bacterium, or these guys are bacteria, antagonistic. So let's keep this for the timing. We don't know the meaning of this word. To a number of harmful, so to a number of bad guys. So if something is harmful to the bad guys, which means it is opposite to it. Yeah, so that is a rough estimate of the word antagonistic. And the true meaning of antagonistic is enemy. Okay, so an antagonist is an enemy. So these guys are enemies of harmful, but you didn't have to figure out enemy. You just have to figure out they're against it. They are greater in suppressive than in non-suppressive. So the good guys are greater in suppressive than in non-suppressive. And if you go back to the previous sentence said it is because of the change in the microorganisms of the soil that even without crop rotation, after a few years, the land becomes all right. How? Because the good guys increase in numbers, which is what this sentence means. This suggests that the presence of such bacteria, which means the good guys, suppresses the bad guys. This is obvious. This is just a repetition for as far as we are concerned. There is now considerable experiment support for this view. So there is decent research which has been done on it. Wheat yield increases of 27% have been obtained in field trials by treatment of wheat seeds with the good guys. So when wheat seeds were treated with the good guys, wheat yield increased. And now we can understand the last sentence much better of this para. Similar treatment of sugar beets, cotton, and potatoes has had similar results. So when these other plants were treated with the good guys, PF, then they also became better. Okay, next para, we've already read the first sentence. So it seems, according to the first sentence of the next para, that we can imitate nature. Nature does it on its own after a few years. We can imitate nature by artificially putting the good guys, PF. And this is where GM starts playing a role. So which means how will it be more beneficial than nature? Probably because it will do it faster. Nature requires years. This may not require years. For example, a form of bad guys altered to remove its harmful, which means GM is being done to a bad guy now, okay? Genetic modification is being done. So it is altered to remove its harmful properties, which means its bad properties could be released into the environment in quantities favorable to its competing. So let's break it down. So a bad guy, you remove the bad qualities of the bad guy. So what does it become? It automatically becomes a good guy. So this is what is happening here. And then the bad guys turned good could be released into the environment in quantities favorable to its competing with. So much you put, the quantity should be so much that it can compete with and eventually remove the harmful strain, which means the bad versions, which means it's previous brothers and sisters, who were bad, who are still bad, but this has become good. So it eventually crowds them out, kicks them out. Some experiments suggest that deliberately releasing altered these non-pathogenic. So this is another mouthful. So you can call it as PS. But remember, this is again altered. So this is going to be an example of a good guy. Could crowd out the non-altered variety that causes frost damage. So the bad version of PS causes frost damage, whereas if you substitute it with the good version, which means you remove the bad parts of PS, not F, then it prevents frost damage, it seems. Okay. Opponents. So now you need to be careful because now we are going to look at it from the opposite angle. So guys, please pay attention. Okay. Opponents of such research have objected that the deliberate and large-scale release of genetically altered bacteria, GM, might have deleterious results. So suppose we don't know deleterious, but it is so obvious you can figure out. They are opponents. They are opponents of GM. So what will they say? Well, whatever you're doing might have what kind of results? Harmful results. Well, that is what is deleterious, at least in this context. Proponents is the opposite of opponents. On the other hand, argue that this particular strain is altered only by the removal of the gene responsible. So the proponents are saying, hang on, the only difference between the natural version of these organisms and the artificial version is that we've removed one gene. A removal of the gene responsible for the strain's propensity to cause frost damage. Strain's tendency to cause frost damage. So which means we have only removed that element from these bad guys, which was responsible for bad things. So then basically proponents are saying, what is your problem? It's the same thing. We just removed the bad element. Okay. Thereby rendering it safer than the phytopathogen from which it was derived. So now it has become safer than the earlier version. Phytopathogen are the bad guys. Some proponents have gone further. So some proponents have gone even further and suggest that genetic alteration techniques, meaning such techniques of genetic modification, could create organisms with totally new combinations of desirable traits not found in nature. So, which means they could create completely new organisms which only have what we want them to be, meaning they are only good, 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 and they are not found in nature, they are artificially created. For example, genes responsible for production of insecticidal compounds. Now, insecticidal, suppose you don't know the meaning, I think this is a common word, but suppose you don't know, it is made up of insect and side. And side, you think of other words, homicide, fratricide, and so on. So, killing. So, insecticidal meaning that which kills insects. So, genes responsible for production of insecticidal compounds have been transposed from other bacteria into good guys that colonize comb roots. So some genes responsible for production of things which kill insects, okay, and remember insects are usually harmful for plants, have been transposed from other bacteria. So they have been taken from other bacteria or converted into the good guys that colonize comb roots. So comb roots may be some plant, and it helps that. Experiments of this kind are difficult and require great care. Now, this is the author saying that, such experiments are difficult and one should be careful about them. Such bacteria are developed in highly artificial environments, obviously in laboratory settings. It's not live right now, and may not compete well with natural soil bacteria. So since they have been done in artificial environments, you don't know what will happen in reality. Maybe they don't behave as they did in laboratory, because suddenly in nature there are so many other factors at play. Nevertheless, so now a counter to that, nevertheless, proponents contend, so proponents say that the prospects for improved agriculture through such methods seem excellent. So the prospects are excellent according to the proponents. In fact, that is the reason why they are proponents. These prospects lead, now we know what these prospects were, lead many to hope that current efforts to assess the risks of deliberate release, consciously release of altered things, will successfully answer the concerns of opponents and create a climate in which such research can go forward without undue obstacles, without undue impediment. So now, guys, Vishal, I'm sorry for this. I think some mistake was made from my side, and hence this is not going. We've done one passage, so don't worry. You can watch the recording of this passage. We've just done one passage as of now, so don't worry. Okay, guys, tell me, those of you who had a problem with this passage, have you understood it properly? Those of you who had a problem with this passage. All right. Now here's again here's my claim, one more claim. Those of you who got it sort of or didn't get it and got a few questions wrong, or those of you who got it and still got a few questions wrong, here's my claim. I think if you go back right now to those questions, chances are you won't require any help from me. Maybe one, but let's see. Tell me, guys, can you now do the questions on your own? For that, obviously, you'll have to revisit those questions right now. So I'm willing to wait, no problem. But let's see if this is true. Can you now do the questions on your own? Impervious. Did I read this word impervious? Where is impervious written, Rohit? Oh, okay. It must be in the question. Okay. One sec. Yeah, that's if you did know the meaning of that word, then that will be a tricky one. But I don't know. You just have to sort of okay, maybe it was time pressure or whatever. But if you go back to your school days, we were in in geography and even some other science, I think, we were taught impervious rocks. So rocks from which the water or whatever, it doesn't go. Uh, it just goes over them, so they don't soak it in. So that is the meaning of impervious. All right. So impervious basically, if the crops are impervious to parasitical organisms, now you can guess the meaning, that parasitical organisms doesn't affect them. I mean, they're like, you can go somewhere else. I'm not bothered. Yes, Tushar, correct. Correct. Pervious is similar to porous, and so impervious is the opposite of that. Vishal, I think, no, Vish 4LR is asking sixth question. Okay. So Vishal, did you try it again just now? Did you do it once more just now? Vishal, could you figure it out that this is a critical reasoning question? Which of the following, if true, would most seriously weaken? Okay, cool. The proponent's argument that reducing the safety of using, okay, sorry, regarding proponent's argument regarding the safety of using altered PS to control frost damage. And if you go back, let's understand the question first. I want you to figure out the answer. Okay. So the question is saying that proponents gave some reason regarding the safety of PS. And if you remember, I just explained it. According to them, well, we are only changing one gene. So if there is an organism, let's call it X, and now all I have done is made it X minus one gene. Okay, so it's still X, it just lacks that one gene, and that gene was a bad thing as far as we are concerned. So it caused frost damage, so we just removed that. So they were basically responding to opponents that, what is your problem, it is the same thing, why are you creating such a hassle? Now this is a very, from the critical reasoning perspective, a very bad argument. Okay, so just to give you an example, suppose you go to suppose you have a child, okay, and the principal has called you, that there is some problem with your child, creates mayhem, lot of nonsense, and you take him to a doctor, okay, thinking that there is some issue, some psychological issue, and maybe the doctor can talk or whatever. The doctor does his whatever tests and whatever, and the doctor tells you, everything is fine in your child. And remember, your child is very brilliant, okay, suppose. So he says everything is very fine with your child, just that there is one element because of which there's one gene which we have identified. Let's imagine it's an advanced society. So we have identified a gene which is responsible for this extremely naughty behavior, because of which your child creates mayhem. So we'll remove it and your child will be absolutely fine. Now, as a parent, what should you ask? Logically, so you should ask, doctor, what else is this gene responsible for? Meaning, is it only responsible for this bad behavior, or does it have some other role to play? Because since this is a natural thing, him having this gene, what does this gene do otherwise? What other things? Because it's not that one gene does only one thing. And suppose the doctor tells you, well, this is also the gene because of which your child gets very high marks in maths. Now what will you say? I'm sure you will say, then let it be. Let him be naughty. I'll take care of this, whatever. So this is the same thing you need to ask to the proponents, that, you're removing this one gene, but what else was that gene responsible for? Was it only responsible for bad things? Vishal, tell me, can you now find the answer? Okay. B for boy and D for dog. Okay. The altered, I'm reading B first. The altered bacteria derived from a strain that is parasitic to plants and can cause damage to crops. No, you are misreading this. The altered bacteria are derived. So this is X minus the gene. So let's call it X minus 1. and this is X. So you are not showing a weakness. Remember, we have to weaken. You're not showing a weakness. You're just giving another piece of information. They anyway said that it is going to be X minus 1. And their whole logic was, what is the problem if it is only X minus 1? So I think what you misunderstood is you probably thought this part to refer to the altered one. Whereas altered one is this, and it is derived. So derived is the clue here. It is derived from this. So this is X, this is the original, and this is not. Okay. Yeah, yes, Rohit. Yes, correct. And Shubham is saying, okay, I'll come back, Shubham. So now if you look at D, often genes whose presence is responsible for one harmful characteristic. So genes whose presence is responsible for one must be present in order to prevent other harmful characteristics, which means genes which cause one bad thing are the same genes which prevent so many other bad things. Now you have weakened the argument that, hang on, why should we remove these genes? Because it is helpful. It is harmful in one sense, but it is helpful in another sense. In fact, senses. Vishal, have you got it? Okay, cool, Vishal. Okay, Shubham Kumar Yadav is asking, I am able to answer by option elimination. Can you please discuss if there is any other point that might be missing? Okay, cool. Let me just hang. Let me just. According to the passage, proponents of the use of genetically in agriculture argue the truth of the altered bacteria used in frost damage experiments. I think if you've understood the passage, especially the way I discussed it, then the answer is, I mean, we almost read the answer. I almost said it. So, do you really need to eliminate, or you can still figure out the answer? Were you confused between more than one answer choice, Shubham? Shubham, I want to understand. You didn't find? Okay, just pay attention to the screen, okay? Okay, pay attention to where I'm going to underline. It is the second para. So I'm coming from here and I've come here. Proponents, on the other hand, argued that this particular strain is altered only by the removal this part of the gene responsible. So only that one gene is removed, only by removal of the gene. Okay, which means one. Is that okay? This is where it is. Is that okay, Shubham? Okay, Rohit. Third question. Okay, so first of all, it's an inference question. It can be inferred from author's discussion of the good guys, that which one of the following would be true of crops for to whom parasitical organisms don't do anything. So parasites are useless, meaning to them. So they are like, they keep chilling, and when parasites come, parasites can't do anything. Parasites have to go their own way, and these guys keep chilling. Okay, so if we have such plants, then what can we infer based on the author's discussion of the good guys? Now remember, what do the good guys do? The good guys increase in number after a few years. They increase in number in the soil, and they suppress the bad guys. That's what happens in a natural framework. So uh, if there are crops to whom the bad guys don't do anything anyway, then what can we infer? I think you will be able to figure it out. Rohit, I think you'll be able to figure it out now. Their yield would not be likely to be improved by adding the good guys. Bad guys don't do anything to them. Why will they need the good guys? They're anyway absolutely fine. C, Rohit. The good guys, PF, have to be a part of this answer choice. The passage has told us something about PF, the good guys, in a natural scenario. And now we're just supposed to figure out if plants who are not harmed by the bad guys, what can we infer about them from the author's discussion of the good guys? That since the bad guys don't harm them, they don't need the good guys. And that is what is answer choice C. Okay. So is everybody fine now? Yes, Rohit, what is your question? If that word is important for you to even figure out what the question is about, I think you should leave that question. You can't help it. You should leave that question, Rohit. That's the best you can do. Thankfully, it is not going to happen very often, and definitely not an Indian exam. But yeah, so quite often you will figure out the meaning contextually. You'll be able to guess the meaning. But suppose you cannot, then you should leave the question, because how will you answer the question when you don't even know what what is being asked? So you should leave it. Okay. All right, guys. Now I wanted to ask. I want to ask you something. Should we do a live passage, or should I first discuss the second passage? This one. Should we discuss the second passage, or should we do the live passage? All right. So cool. I'll give you 10 minutes. Is that okay? It's a short passage with only 4 questions. Is 10 minutes fine, guys? Okay, cool. So I'll give you 10 minutes. You can start doing it, and then I will discuss it. I will keep the passage here. It is just that only one question will show. Okay, guys, time's up. Okay, cool. Okay, the answers are D for dog. First one. Second is A. Third is B for boy. And fourth is E. Dog, A, boy, E. Yes, Tushar. I think you're kind of right. Something similar, but from the opposite side, we can look at the second passage of the first set, wherein the questions were easy, the passage was slightly difficult. If you think about passage 2 of set that I sent you, the passage was slightly tough, and that too because it is from literature and all that. So a lot of science people or engineering people may have a problem in it, may not. But yeah, it is a medium passage because the content was sort of tough, but the questions were easy. And the sort of similar thing is happening here, which is that the questions may be slightly difficult, but then the passage is very, very easy. All right. So, Okay, I've got questions. How many of you got all four? There are four questions, I think. Yeah. How many of you got all four right? How many of you got all four right, guys? Tushar, 3 on 4. What about others? Fast, tell me fast. 3 on 4, 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 3 on 4. Whoa. Okay. So, which means one question everybody got wrong. Raj, 2. Okay. Okay, I'll just do preview. We won't obviously read this passage, very easy, but just to give you some sort of an idea. So I'll just do a preview of this. Uh, First and last, first and last. In response to the increasing environmental damage wrought by poachers, so we are looking at poachers, people who kill wild animals for whichever reason, to sell their skin or body parts or I don't know, other stuff. Authorities placed a ban on ivory in the 1980s. Now, ivory is what the material of an elephant's tusk. It is supposed to be very expensive and all that. Okay, so in response to the increasing environmental damage, authorities placed a ban. All right, last sentence. The resulting explosion in the ivory trade. So now this is the opposite of how the passage began. It began with a ban, and but here there is an explosion in the trade. So something happened in between. Has seen price rises from nearly 10 times. Okay. Next para, unfortunately, the countries with the worst poaching problems have also tended to be the ones least able to combat the problem due to unstable political systems, corruption, lack of comprehensive enforcement programs, or some combination of all these factors. Basically, countries which are not healthy apolitically. Last sentence, zoologists hope this new method. So basically, second paragraph is going to be about this new method, and we can guess the passage his main point is this new method, I think, because how the passage began, that there was a ban, but suddenly there was a upsurge in ivory trade. This new method will pinpoint the exact location of poached ivory uh, and force countries to accept the responsibility in enforcing the ban. Okay, so some new method has been developed, it seems, which will pinpoint where the ivory came from. So maybe that is what is going to help combat this massive issue. So this is what the passage is. All right. First question. The passage suggests that anyone wants me to do the first question? Fast, fast, fast. Anybody? Oh, okay. The passage suggests which of the following about the ivory ban. Now, remember, ivory ban is the very first sentence, and so if you want, we can read it fast. Although the ban, so this starts with although, transition word, two parts, opposite. Although the ban resulted in an initial decrease in sales and trade of illegal ivory and a concurrent increase in the elephant population. So you can guess the meaning of this word, concurrent here, okay? And the concurrent increase in the elephant population. So, which means if there was a decrease in the sale and trade of illegal ivory, then what will be the increase in elephant population? Well, simultaneous, along with that. So that is the meaning of concurrent. More pressing needs caused most Western nations to withdraw funding from poaching prevention programs. So they withdrew funding. Without significant financial support, poor countries were unable to effectively combat. So since they didn't have money, they couldn't do anything about it because they're poor countries. The resulting explosion we've already read. So this resulted in explosion. Okay, the passage suggests which of the following about the ivory ban. It has been mostly unsuccessful in reducing the trade. No, it is. So I think a lot of you would mark this. It is not the ban. Remember, the question is about ban. It is not saying that the ban was unsuccessful. It is saying that when most Western nations, when they withdrew funding, that is when the resulting explosion happened. So which means the primary cause is not that the ban was ineffective. It is just that when they did not have money, which they were getting from Western countries, then the problem started. Ivory ban will be successful has got nothing to do with DNA. They will increase funding. What has it got to do? And remember, this is a suggest question, so this is inference. Western monetary support was a major factor. Yes, this makes sense. It will continue to be ineffective unless the problems of political corruption are solved. It wasn't because of political corruption that the ban was ineffective. You have to figure out why there was a ban, and then, in fact, the passage is saying the opposite. Immediately after the ban, things started looking positive. Then a third thing happened, because of which things started looking negative again. What was that third thing? I just now explained to you. I'll do it again. Pay attention, Vishal. In response to the increasing environmental damage, these countries placed a ban. Okay. What happened after the ban? It resulted in an initial decrease in sales and trade illegal ivory and concurrent increase in elephant. So which means elephant population increased, ivory trade decreased. More pressing needs caused most Western nations to withdraw funding, which means the ban was dependent on the Western funding. And they withdrew funding because they had other pressing, meaning more important things to take care of. Western funding for poaching prevention programs. So what was the funding for? For poaching prevention programs. Without significant financial support, poorer countries were unable to effectively combat poachers. Why? Because the poaching prevention programs couldn't function anymore because there's no money. The resulting explosion has seen prices increase to nearly 40 times, sorry, 10 times. So ban was successful. It is just that the moment the Western countries withdrew money support, then things started going bad. Okay, Vishal got it, I think. All right. So everybody has. So, okay, next. Second question, anybody? Okay, Rohit, second question. The response of the countries with the worst poaching problems to the situation was most analogous to. Okay, analogous means it's an analogy. Okay, so analogy is if this is similar to, if A is similar to B and B is similar to C, then chances are that A is similar to C. It's a very bad analogy, but that's a rough estimate of an analogy. Okay, yes, similar. So what is it similar to? And Rohit is asking, why not 2? So first we need to understand what were they doing, okay? What they were doing was, here, countries use this uncertainty because uncertainty of the country of the origin of the ivory. This uncertainty to avoid responsibility. They are avoiding responsibility. How? For curbing illegal poaching in the territories by attempting to blame other countries. So what do they do? Since you cannot say this ivory is from this country or that country, they keep shifting the blame. They say, no, the other countries are not doing enough, because you can't say that, this ivory was from your country. So they're evading. I understand, I think, the confusion with the answer choice, but evading how is the question. So your answer choice. Okay, so evader is correct. So till here you are right, but this is what is the problem. This evader uses deceptive practices, okay, underhand practices, under the desk. Whereas we have to figure out an evader who shifts blame. Yes, I will discuss all two. Raj, resulting explosion whole question. Okay, the resulting explosion in the ivory trade. So resulting explosion meaning ivory trade has exploded, boom, which means it's growing, has seen prices increase to nearly 10 times the $45 per pound price. So previously the price of the rates of ivory were $45 per pound. Pound is the weight used in UK and US. Okay, so it's less than a kilogram. I think roughly 2 or a little less than 2 pounds make up 1 kilogram. So, $45 per pound, it got increased 10 times more than that at the beginning of the decade. So initially it was 45. I think it must have become $450 per pound. That is the meaning. Third, The passage suggests which of the following about the DNA-based map created by zoologists. So we'll have to, because I need to read it. So here it is. First, scientists gathered genetic data from the population of African elephants. An arduous effort that arduous, I don't think can be figured out here. Arduous means extremely difficult. An arduous effort that ultimately resulted in a detailed DNA-based map of the distribution of African elephants. So based on, they could figure out through the DNA of the ivory, if you catch some poachers with some ivory, or if you catch ivory somewhere, and if you do a DNA analysis, you'll probably figure out where it came from, okay? Because they have done a DNA-based map of the distribution of African, which means which all elephants, meaning in which countries, what kind of DNA is there, that they figured out. Then the researchers developed a method to extract DNA evidence from ivory, allowing them to match the ivory with the elephant population of the map. So this is what they did. So if whatever they catch, if the DNA matches with, let's say, let's call it A2B1. Okay, A2B1 is from Kenya. So this ivory came from Kenya. So something like that. Zoologists hope this new method will pinpoint. This we have already read. Third question. Which of the following about the DNA-based map created by zoologists? The map is able to pinpoint the exact elephant from which, I think immediately we can figure out. So it's not the exact elephant. It's the country which they can identify, not the exact elephant. It's in fact common, not commonsensically maybe, but even if you know a little bit about DNA, then you should be able to figure out that DNA, if it could tell me exactly about an elephant, like in murders it does about humans, then it can only tell me about the elephant that has been figured. But what about some other elephant? I think that is impossible to do, right? Especially a new elephant, let's say. How will you figure out if it is from there? Its assemblage involved a great deal of work on the part of the researchers. Okay, great deal of work. It makes sense, but I'm not very happy with this. I'll come back to this. Its creation will force countries to accept responsibility for the ivory poached from within their borders. Okay, the problem here is this word. Whereas, if you go back to the passage, zoologists hope. This is what I remembered. So, compare this. They are saying will, whereas zoologists hope. So we can't be we can't be certain for sure. It allows zoologists to keep track of the migration patterns. I don't think that was it may happen, it may be true, but that is not the focus. The focus was, remember, ivory trade. It must be updated constantly to account for changes in elephant populations. Well, maybe commonsensically true, but at least the passage is not talking about it. So we are left with the only answer choice. Its assemblage involved a great deal of work. And I think this great deal of work is coming. I explained this meaning of this word to you, arduous. So if you remember Manish last time towards the end, and I couldn't answer him, I told him I'll answer later. I don't know if Manish is here. So I told Manish that Manish asked the question. It's a good question that, in inference questions, is it necessary that the answer choice will not be there? Okay, so the answer is in GMAT, yes. GRE, yes, 100%. The answer cannot be there. It has to be figured. But what happens in Indian exams is sometimes the teachers don't know that this is what an inference means. Sometimes they unknowingly make a mistake or whatever. So sometimes you may get an answer choice which is not a true inference. So here's the way to go about it. If your one answer choice is a true inference, then there is no doubt, you mark it, move ahead. This confusion will only arise when there is not a true inference. Now, if there isn't a true inference, between 1 and 2, you're left with two types of answer choices. One is almost directly stated, and one is a paraphrase of what is directly stated. Paraphrase means saying something using different words. So in this, you choose paraphrase first and direct second, meaning if the paraphrase is also not there, then you choose direct. Actually, direct answer choice is a very bad answer choice for an inference question. But I've seen it happen, at least in the tutorial, all these big names. In there, some RCs, I've seen an inference question with a direct answer. But thankfully, it is not common. It is very rare. So remember, first choice, pure inference, which means unstated. Second choice, paraphrase of what is stated. Third, stated. So this is a paraphrase. It is just the meaning of arduous, that it involved a great deal of work. This is just a Meaning of arduous. Very difficult. Okay. Vishal sir, force is there in the passage. What do you mean force is there? As in, oh no, I don't, I'm not talking about force. One sec. I am talking about the word will. So force is true, but then if you look back, they hope this new method will pinpoint and force countries. So yes, but they hope this. Okay, they hope this will happen. Whereas this answer choice is saying its creation will force. So our focus is will. Force is okay. Will versus hope. That is the thing. I hope Vishal has figured it out. What dilemma are you talking about, Anchal? I think it's not a dilemma. I think it's just one word that you miss. And this is the point of attending classes or lectures. These small things which on your own you miss out. In fact, you don't even know that you miss out. These things will come out in the open now, okay, while we go on with these classes. And so slowly you will start thinking like that I need to pay attention to a word. The passage talks about this word, whereas I paid attention to another word, and this will become habitual. Right now these will be problematic. Right now you will think, how the hell am I supposed to pay attention to these things? Not rocket science. It is just a practice problem. You are not practiced in these things. No problem at all. Don't worry. It should be taken care of. Okay. I hope I've satisfied your problem, Anchal. Okay. The passage is chiefly concerned with, which means chiefly concerned, main idea, primary purpose, very common GMAT question. Okay. The passage is chiefly concerned. What is the primary purpose? Exposing the weaknesses of ivory ban. I think some of you may think this to be correct. Criticizing countries for failing to accept responsibility. Not really. This is just one aspect of the passage, and that too, we don't even know if the author was criticizing. Pleading with Western countries to reinstitute financial. Absolutely. I think this, no, none of you would have marked. Advocating a course of action for countries with poaching problems. I think most of you will have, I mean, not most, but quite a few of you would have marked D. Detailing a way to overcome a problem that has lessened the effectiveness of the ivory ban. Okay. Okay, so this also. Now tell me, guys, what are your answers? What were your answers? I think A, D, and E. So tell me, what were your answers? E. Okay. E. All right, so let's try to figure out. If the chief concern of the passage was A, then the second para also would have talked about exposing the weaknesses of the ivory ban. That is not what is happening. In fact, even the first paragraph is not exposing the weakness of the ban. It is telling us that things didn't work out because of the lack of funding or the removal of funding. Okay. Answer choice D, advocating a course of this, I think a lot of you would have marked. Advocating a course of action for countries with poaching problems. The problem is the author is not saying that countries should do this, they should take care of, they should start utilizing this new research, and so on and so forth. He's not doing, or he or she is not doing any such thing. It's just telling us initially there was a ban because of lack of funding. Ivory trade came back with a boom. Then the second paragraph starts with countries evade responsibility, and then it says a new research looks very promising. He or she is not advocating anything, and that is the problem. Nothing is being advocated. You can think that maybe he's doing it, but not. And so obviously detailing a way to overcome a problem that has lessened the effectiveness of the ivory ban. So yeah, absolutely correct. So tell me, is there any other issue? After use of DNA, they were suggesting a way. Where? Remember, we are asked about the author's primary purpose or the passage's primary purpose. The last part of the passage, I think you're looking at this part, are the researchers, the zoologists. These guys hope. It is not the author. The author is just narrating. Author is just, in fact, telling us that this happened, this happened, this happened. Zoologists are saying this. The author is not advocating anything. Tell me, Vishal, fast. Question number 7. Oh, primary purpose of the passage. Okay, again, this is exact same question as we did just now for that other passage. So again, what is the motive? Why does this passage exist? So what is your problem? C and D. Okay. Describe cinematic interpretation of literature. Explain the effect of contemporary situations upon interpretation of literature. If you compare, Vishal, this is a uh, very nice example of how to learn a main idea question, how to learn to do it. Okay. So what is the difference between C and D answer choices? What do you think is the difference? The difference is, I hope you have said something to yourself. I think you got it. You did the reverse. D is actually a broad answer choice because C is a broad answer choice. D sort of includes C, but then it narrows it down by saying that it explains the effect of contemporary situations. And here we go. Cinematic renditions of historic pieces of literature provide an informative glimpse into the cultural and social context in which the films were made. Preview this is. This is acutely noticeable. Nationalistic concerns, okay? Social and cultural context, don't forget. This play was written during the reign of Elizabeth I, when English national identity had begun to crystallize and the language and culture we know became their present form, or were beginning to become the present form. Next, Shakespeare's play has been adapted in 2 film versions. This scene with Henry, whatever. So this doesn't help us much. Now, just based on preview, think. Describe cinematic interpretation of literature, which means how has cinema, or if you go back here, 2 famous film versions. And so only specific to 2 films. And what will be discussed? Cultural and social context. So the effect of contemporary situations upon interpretation of literature. In fact, once we read the passage, we'll get much better reasons for choosing D. So C is very broad because cinematic interpretations of literature, for example, they don't have to be with respect to social and cultural context. They could be with respect to some other thing. Thousands of things, cinematic interpretations of literature. For example, how has cinema brought about an increase in readership of world literature? So that is also possible. So answer choice C can be interpreted in many ways. Yes, Vishal, the last paragraph gives 2 examples, but it gives 2 examples not of cinematic interpretations, but of how the contemporary situation influences cinematic interpretation. So let me just give you a couple of clues here. Let's look at this sentence. The film was funded in part by the British government and is widely understood to have been intended as a propaganda film made in anticipation of D-Day, the war. And let's look at this sentence. Was made during the Second World War, immediately before the invasion of Normandy. Critics of the films have emphasized the pageantry, bravado, and here, nationalistic undertones of this version. So again, why are those 2 films talked about? So basically, one is comparison is happening, but the first film is specifically being talked about to elaborate on the theme that the current situation, contemporary situation of whichever film, whether it is 20s or 30s or 40s, whichever era or decade the film was made, that situation determines what kind of a film will be made, even though these films are renditions of historic plays, old plays. But still, I hope you have understood, Vishal. Shubham, just 1 second, I'll come back to this. 8th, the author would most likely agree with which of the following? The more effective here is a problem, so 1 is out. Contemporary events influence the adaptation of historic. So this is directly coming from why this is the right answer. So we'll keep 2. And since 2 and 3 are not there, we don't even have to read 3. Straight away, we found the answer. As I said in the beginning of today's lecture, that you have to figure out patterns. I will talk about this in much greater detail. How do you go about learning patterns? Okay. How do you make larger frameworks from specific things that I will discuss? Because a specific thing, if you only pay attention to that, you have only learned how to do that passage. You haven't learned how to do so many other passages. Okay. So this is what is going to be the focus. And as I'll get more comfortable in this format in maybe 1 or maximum 2 more sessions, I think I will be much better, because this is a completely new domain. And so I myself, sometimes I mix up, end up taking more time, and so on. Do we have any visibility? You're using corporate language with me. On the course will proceed at this point. I couldn't understand. There's no when, where, what. Do we have any visibility on the course? I couldn't understand you, Shubham. Could you clarify? No, now onwards, see, the next class is going to be a paid class, and so before that there will be a Telegram group. So we'll everybody will be in the Telegram group. Then you don't have to worry about notifications. All the notifications will be there in the Telegram group. We'll make a Telegram group of the people who will be a part of that course. So everything will be chilled after that. Next session will be Thursday, most probably, if people join this course. Then that's it. Yeah, GRE is tough. VCR 10. So I think you'll be fine in these lectures. I think you'll learn. I give GMAT passages also here. Fee structure, I really haven't decided, and I don't want to charge too much, because few days are left, and as you guys obviously know that we are not really money people. So I'm thinking that those people who have bought our RC course on Learnist, for I think it's for 999, so they don't have to pay anything, and the rest will just have to pay for that course, and this thing will be added in that course. So I think it should be 999. I'll decide it by tomorrow. I think it should be 999. It shouldn't be more than that. Telegram group hasn't been formed, Achal. I'll form it once people start paying. And so at Learnist's page, I will put the link of the Telegram group. This is for, since it is RC, so this is not a GRE verbal course, but this can definitely take care of GRE RC. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Hope today's class was useful. These things will only get better. I am also learning, and something got messed up today with the link. So yeah, happy Dussehra, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a good night.